Hello, and welcome to today's session, Why Test for Proficiency? My name is Dawn Samples, and I'm the director for Avant Learning. I'm happy that you've joined us here today. Today, we're going to talk about the assessment cycle. The assessment cycle has 4 stages that we identify here at Avant as stages of this assessment cycle. The first stage is the assess stage. This is the stage where we actually test for proficiency. In the second stage, we analyze the data that we get back from those tests, and we use that data to set action steps and to target outcomes that we want to see our students achieving. The accelerate stage is where we begin to implement targeted practices that are performance based and proficiency driven. This is where sometimes we have professional learning, or we acquire new resources or materials, or we try new strategies to be able to accelerate that growth in proficiency. And the fourth stage is where the learners are able to achieve their goal and show what they can do. In reality, you can begin at any one of these stages in this cycle and begin the cycle for you and your students. Our learning intentions and target outcomes for today are: I am learning why and how proficiency testing can enhance my practice. I am learning the value of examining data and using it to target outcomes. I am learning how being strategic with intentional, performance based, proficiency driven practices accelerates the growth and proficiency of my learners. And I can empower my learners to show what they can do. We're going to begin by looking at the assess stage. We're going to have as an example here the stamp 4S, which is one of our proficiency tests. It's a 4-skill test that is going to test them in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But really, for this assess stage, what we're going to talk about could apply to any of the tests that we offer. You might recognize the 4 questions on the screen by Rick Dufour, who is a best-selling author and educator and trainer. These are 4 questions that I know in my school district we really tried to adhere to as we were planning for instruction and setting targets and goals for student outcomes. These 4 questions are: what do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know if they learn it? How will we respond when some students do not learn? And how will we extend the learning for students who are already proficient? I feel like this really applies to the stages of this cycle as we are trying to determine what our goals are, what we want our learners to be able to show that they can do. And then we have to determine how we'll know when they have actually reached it. And this is where the STAMP test, because that data can be really critical because it informs us of where they are on that journey. And then in the accelerate stage, we begin to think about how will we respond when students cannot learn it or have not learned it, or when they are already exceeding the proficiency targets and goals that we have set. How will we create an instructional pathway, a learning experience for them that's going to meet their personal individual needs? Another thing that's really relevant at this stage is that when we test, we're able to find out where our learners are in their proficiency journey, and it allows us to be able to help them to get where they want to be, or where we have targets or goals for them to be. And it also helps us recognize when and how to celebrate where they are on that journey. It could be at benchmark moments, or it may be at certain grade levels, or whatever the case may be. As we test and we get this data back, it helps inform us of where we are, where we're going, and how we can celebrate the learning along the way. When we assess, this allows us to use the results to plan a strong pathway, and at times it even allows us to create new pathways in a program. So sometimes when we are moving our learners along and trying to reach a certain goal, we discover that we really need to begin the learning process at an earlier age so that they can reach the target we'd like for them to reach by graduation. Another reason to test is that very frequently we see learners who come to our classrooms who are already proficient. Maybe they have a language proficiency that comes from being a native speaker, being a heritage speaker. Maybe they've lived abroad. It could also be that they have someone who lives in their home who speaks another language. In any case, when they test, they are still able to earn recognition, sometimes even credit for a course, maybe even a Seal of Biliteracy, just by being able to show what they can do in the language. It's a real reason to celebrate. Something else that we often see is that when learners stamp test and then they begin to understand what their results mean and the value of the skills that they're learning, it really is exciting for them to think that they are actually becoming proficient and able to communicate in another language. So they often take ownership of their own proficiency journey, and they're more motivated to learn and improve and increase in their proficiency. Let's move on now to the analyze stage. In the analyze stage, this is where we're going to actually look at the data that we get back from the test and begin to look at a number of things that could impact the instructional decisions that we make. This is so that we can be more strategic in serving the students and helping them grow in their language. And in some cases, in dual language immersion programs, it also impacts their growth and proficiency and performance in their other content areas as well. When we analyze STAMP data, we learn what learners can actually do in reading, writing, listening, and speaking in a proficiency based setting. We're able to predict student performances on other tests and assessments, such as AP or even IB, or other tests that may be in your district. These are ways that we can better prepare them because we can see where they actually are on that journey to where we want them to go. We're able to learn where students are strong and where they have areas of challenge. And it helps us then be able to make more informed decisions so that we can personalize that learning experience for our students. When we analyze the data, we also have notices where we see trends. Maybe we notice that certain skills are stronger than others in certain classes or in certain languages. It's sometimes, even from a programmatic standpoint, really interesting to see where you may have notices in these trends that might be coming from something that is in your curriculum or in your resources or materials, and that might need some supplemental support, or maybe you might want to advocate to get additional materials or professional learning to help address some of the trends that you might see. The data also helps us learn how to ask questions that will help us plan for next steps. It could be that you notice certain teachers or certain classes have really strong outcomes that exceed what you thought they were going to. And in those cases, you may want to leverage what strategies and resources are they using, and how can we advocate to get those same strategies, materials, or just implementation of what is happening in that classroom into other classrooms in that school or in the district. We can also begin to set, change, or calibrate our proficiency targets. Once you know where you are, it may be that you're further along than you thought you would be, and you may want to rethink what your final goal is. Or maybe you're not quite as far as you thought you would be, and you want to think about your timeline. Maybe you want to extend the timeline for reaching the goals that you had set. So, having that data is essential to be able to calibrate that and decide what your next steps need to be in planning that pathway for your learners. We're able to see, when we look at this data, we're able to see where we need more practice, where we need more learning, so that we can better assist our students. It could be that maybe they're really strong readers, but maybe they're not scoring as high in listening. Or maybe they are really, really good speakers, but they don't write very well. So, when we can see where they need more practice, we can build opportunities for them to practice and increase their skill in those areas. When we analyze the stamp data, we really are able to see exactly what our learners can do, and we can be strategic in how to support their growth. Let's talk a moment about the accelerate stage. In the accelerate stage, we can use what we learn through the data analysis and then accelerate the student learning. And we do this by being strategic and targeting learning experiences that we know are in the areas where the students need more support or challenge. We can use what we've learned to ensure a learning pathway that's personalized, relevant, meaningful, and meets the interests and individual needs of our learners. Another thing that we can do is we can identify areas that we need to have growth in our own personal and professional learning so that we can better serve our students and further our own journey around this proficiency program or outcome. We can use the data that we analyzed as well to leverage strengths and resources on our team to find out who is interested in furthering their own growth in a certain area, and then begin to plan for professional learning and that professional learning journey of your teachers and staff in your building. So, when we know what areas our students need to practice in, this is where we can be really focused on engaging them in opportunities for practice without penalty so that they feel safe to take risks and use that language every day and increase their skills in those areas where they need that additional practice. We're able to provide learners with ongoing, timely feedback. We're able to create formative tasks and assessments and score their work using proficiency descriptors and calibrate that as well with the data that we've received on these on their scores. Our whole goal really is to be able to provide learners with opportunities that allow them to experience a really strong learning cycle. We want them to learn. We want them to apply what they've learned. We want them to practice. We want them to receive feedback. And then we want them to practice some more. And then they will go through an assessment stage where they may be doing self assessment or self reflection. They may get feedback again before they move on to a more final or summative assessment. But we want them to be able to have a learning cycle that is meaningful to them and where they feel like they're actually making progress in their skills. And when we are able to target these experiences, it increases the chance that we're actually going to get some traction and these students are going to experience that growth. The last phase that we're going to talk about is the achieve phase. In the achieve phase, this is where we really are supporting our learners through these performance based practices that are going to set them up to achieve the proficiency level that they are really striving for. They can go on with the scores that might be required in their state or through the global seal and receive a seal of biliteracy by achieving those levels of proficiency when they graduate. These achievements may allow them to have so many opportunities. They may have opportunities in college that they might not have had otherwise because they are able to show that they can actually use the language at a very strong skill level. They may be offered better pay in their jobs. They will have a national and even international validation of their language ability that will help to assure them and give them confidence that when they reach out to engage with native speakers or with people in their buildings or colleagues that they work with, that they have every confidence to build lasting relationships in the workplace, but also socially, and that they're able to use these language skills in a really meaningful context that will help enrich their lives. So these are the four stages: assess, analyze, accelerate, and achieve. I hope that what we went through today helped give you some ideas. And maybe as you look at this cycle, you might be able to identify what stage you would want to begin with. Maybe you've already tested for proficiency and you would like to do something deeper and examine the data. Or maybe you've received the data and you want to learn how to interpret that data and begin to implement certain practices so you can accelerate the growth in proficiency. Or maybe you have done all of these things and you want to know what you need to do to get that seal of biliteracy in the hands of your students. In any case, whatever stage you're in, we are here to help and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. We'll be happy to talk with you about any of these stages and help you figure out what your next steps will be so that you can better support your students and help their proficiency just blossom and grow. So I would like to thank you for your time today. This is my contact information. You can also check out our website at morelearning.avantassessment.com. And my email is dawn.samples@avantassessment.com. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.